Postcards used to celebrate our crowning achievements. This herald of the Causeway Bridge reminds us we may be too cool these days to enthuse over achievements like Charity Hospital's graceful deco. Travel this state and you'll notice things are missing. Travel this state some more and you'll want to save them before the only place you can see them is on an old postcard. Cheers, though, because our last sight offers natural hope, and this scene comes from the easternmost islands. James Harris is the senior biologist for 7 natural refuges in southeast Louisiana protected by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Down at the very mouth of the Mississippi River in Venice, he and 2 interns steer us out into the shipping channel aboard a small powerboat. Today we're headed to the southernmost Chandeleur Islands, a crescent-shaped chain at the very eastern edge of Louisiana's boot. As much as we worry today about the erosion of barrier islands, it's an inevitable course of nature that sands shift. The grasses are essential because seabirds won't nest in plain sand. Their young have to have some cover. Louisiana's state bird, the eastern brown pelican, gave up trying to nest here decades ago.
There have been people looking at pelicans and studying pelicans for a long time, even going back to the 20s and 30s. But until the really dramatic declines of the 50s and then into the 60s, I don't know that anybody realized, there may have been a few, but most people didn't realize that there was a problem. With the wide-scale use of a lot of pesticides in the 50s and then into the 60s, of course, here in Louisiana, our state bird was totally extirpated or totally wiped out as far as nesting goes by the early 60s. There weren't any pelicans nesting in Louisiana anymore.
Common seabirds like these laughing gulls never left. The fragility of a new hatched chick is astounding. He's trying to find some shade at noon. Gulls and terns can make their nest nearly anywhere. Pelicans are more fussy. For these elegant and ancient birds, the loss of grassy strips in the Chandeleur chain made Louisiana's coast uninviting.
They weren't going anywhere. They just, they weren't producing enough young to keep up with the numbers that were dying as they got older. So you had a gradual decline and then at some point a very dramatic decline in the population itself. They dropped to very low numbers throughout the country. Right now, I would say that habitat restoration and habitat protection is the priority. The birds are protected by law. You can't collect the eggs, you can't collect the birds, but they need some place to go. They need some place to nest. And it's not just their nesting habitat that needs protection. It's the entire watersheds, the entire estuary systems, the entire coastline. That's what produces the food that supports the pelicans and the other seabirds that are out here. On this island and some of the other ones, there are some raccoons. There are raccoons.
It's just amazing.
They float out on trash that comes out of the river.
Really?
Seriously. The islands within the Chandeleur chain are all protected within the National Wildlife Refuge system as part of Brett National Wildlife Refuge. Yeah. We have pelicans nesting on 4 different islands right now. This island here has, you can see the large groups in the background there, has over 5,000 nesting pair on this island alone.
That's the highest number biologists have ever recorded. The simple story you can see and hear is that the pelicans are back.
But when you consider that back in the 60s, there were no pelicans nesting in Louisiana. So this is quite a comeback for them. This is a great success story. Beginning in the late 60s, early 70s, the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries took the initiative to bring birds in from Florida. And in this part of the state, they established them at North Island, up at the north end of the chain. And they started with just a few hundred birds. And from that, the population has grown and expanded, and spread to other islands in the chain, so that now we'll have anywhere from 10 to 16,000 nests in a year. And to me, that's quite remarkable.
Now that they're coming back, the moral in the story is that we should just plain leave this corner of a nearly lost Louisiana alone. Join us again for another edition of Lost Louisiana, when you and I will be going in search of picture-perfect postcards. Boy, I've got an idea. The Hotel Heidelberg is still standing in Baton Rouge. This is awfully sweet. Huey Long used to stay here. Until next time, having a wonderful time.